hold on. Case openings? Case openings? Wait.
A ton of money from
is that
hold on, it's my closing
they
thought.
actually everyone's saying they ran out of 3 because they feel it's profitable.
Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Catalyst Effect podcast. This is episode 22. I'm your host, CROWS, and with me, as always, is Crypto Hado and Missy. And today we have a special guest. We have Rudy from Emberlight. What is up, Rudy? How are you, man?
Hey, I'm all good. Great to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. So I'm super hyped to have you on and get into a conversation about kind of like what you're working on with Emberlight, kind of like your past work and your experience, because I know you have a huge track of work and different games and companies that you've worked with in the past. But before we get into all of that, Missy, Hado, how are you, boys? What's up, Hado? How's your week, brother?
Oh, it's been fun. I've been going back to the gym. It's been really, really nice to go back to the gym and actually have a lot of energy, and my back's not hurting because past 2 weeks I haven't been able to move that much because my lower back has just been out. I don't know, maybe it's old age, maybe it's just bad eating habits, but I'm back and better than ever. And like it's just been a blast, like playing. Well, I'll get to the game of the week in a minute, but I've been playing a game in particular every single night for like 3 or 4 hours a day in Web3. So yeah, can't wait to talk about that.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. I like the health grind that you're on, you know. Give us like a little quick routine of like what's your day look like at the gym.
Yeah, so check this out. I go past the gym to get to the gym because the other gym got rid of my basketball court. So I had to go back to the other gym to get a basketball court. So usually it is 2 or 3 hours of basketball and then like 30 minutes to an hour of weights. And that's been like 3 days in a row, or that was like there was a day in between, but 3 days this week. I'm debating on going today because I'm like really sore and tired, but you know, the grind must go on. So I might go today later on. But yeah, it's just basketball and then weights. And then I've been eating better too. So just trying to get my energy back up after being down for weeks.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. I like that. I can respect that. All right, Missy, what about you, brother? How's your week been?
My week has been nothing short of legendary, man. It's been fucking crazy out here, you know. Things have been very busy in a very positive way. Been playing a shit ton of games. A lot of night CROWS, a lot of Nyan Heroes. I'm like 6th on the leaderboard right now. I'm trying to get my way back to the top 3.
I saw that. I'm coming though.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you. I'm getting up there.
You know, I've finally found my main in that game, so that's been cool. I've been rolling with the tank just because I feel like it's the most useful character in the squad. As far as like, if I can at least defend about 7,000 to 10,000 damage a game, I pretty much like wipe out the damage from 2 of the players on the other team, right? And then if I do another like 6 to 10k damage in that game on my own as well, it's kind of like you're basically doing the same effect as 3 or 4 people on the other team. So it's like not as sweaty as Ghost. You might not get all the kills, it might not look as glorious, but it's very effective, and I love being effective. Like I love winning more than having a high KDA. So I've really just been focusing on that when I played Nyan Heroes, and it's been a lot of fun, man.
Can I just say it's really cool to see like a meta evolve in a Web3 game? Like we're not talking about like, oh my god, when's it coming out? All this stuff. We're just talking about the meta of the game. That's fucking awesome. Just want to say.
Yeah, dude. As early as it is for Nyan Heroes, I think it has enough within the game already to create a meta, you know, around it. I would say that the tank character that Missy's talking about is definitely the most annoying one to go against. It's one of the only characters that takes over 2 sniper bullets to kill it, and you know, it's just really annoying to have to go against that, especially if you're playing with someone like Ghost, where your health is just gonna go way quicker than that. So you got to really strategize. But super dope that you're grinding on that, man. I've also been grinding on that game, but Anyways, let's kick it back to the guest of the show, our man Rudy. Rudy, I always like to start the show with a question to the guest, and that question is, "Who are you today, bro?" If somebody were to meet you, a new gamer were to, have an interaction with you, and they ask you, "Hey, man, who are you today? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you working on?" What is your answer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an adventurer, I'm an explorer, and I'm, out here in Web3 having probably the best time of my career. I think, the last 5 years have been just a roller coaster of awesomeness, and the innovation just keeps going. And I'm so happy for this year. The momentum is going in a positive direction, which is so exciting for everybody. And so, I'm just I'm bullish, forever bullish on Web3, and um, what I'm part of. I'm excited to be part of like so many teams that are just helping move the whole sector forward.
Hell yeah, dude. I love that answer, right? I mean, I think that's a big part of why we all are here, right? Like we're all here to innovate, get a new gaming experience, a new experience into the gaming world, and a whole new experience when it comes to tech in general, right? So I love that that was your answer. And I agree with you, man. I think this year is gonna be huge for Web3 in particular. So I'm excited to be here as well and be part of the building process, right? But I kind of want to get to you into your past a little bit, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, you have a ton of experience and you've worked with so many huge companies that I think any gamer would recognize, right? I know previously you have worked with companies like Activision and Blizzard, working with games like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Club Penguin, right? So can you talk a little bit about that experience, right? And that journey of building with those type of companies and then transitioning into Web3 and kind of discovering this whole new side of technology and integrations for games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be in games. Growing up, I grew up at the time when the NES launched. Super Mario came about, and that was just had such a massive impact on me. And I knew at an early age I just wanted to get into games. And somehow, after high school, I found my way in. And yeah, I kicked off at Disney on Club Penguin, which I would say is quite probably the first metaverse. I mean, there was things going on in Club Penguin, like 15 years ago now, that it took the industry forever to sort of figure out. And it was all item based. They were the frontier of free to play. And yeah, it was awesome being on the ground floor for that. I mean, I was there almost right at the beginning. And then from there, I went over to Activision. I worked on Call of Duty for 6 years. I shipped 5 Call of Duties. I mean, that was like I say it's like climbing Mount Everest every year. It's one of the toughest, things to be a part of. But when you get to the end, you launch the game and you see how many people engage. It's just the best feeling in the world. And I was a fan. I was just a big fan. I played Modern Warfare 2 like crazy, and I was like, I got to work for this company. And so when Modern Warfare 3 came around, that's when I started there. So yeah, from there I went to Blizzard, worked on World of Warcraft. But again, big fan of Blizzard's games at the time. And World of Warcraft, I mean, there isn't any bigger in the Web 2 space, and huge fan. And so it was awesome, walking down the same hallways where that game was created. I was at Blizzard when I started looking at blockchain. So early 2018, I started looking at blockchain. A couple of things that happened. One was CryptoKitties had exploded in late 2017. And those guys were from my hometown, which is Vancouver, Canada. So I got connected with them and I started going deep. There was also a paper that Vitalik put out, a paper where he talked about why he created Ethereum. And one of the reasons he said was because he played World of Warcraft and his favorite class was the Warlock. And Blizzard changed the Warlock and made it worse. And he believed that those kind of decisions should be given to the community, right?
Yep,
Well,
yep. And finally, someone that actually knows the story. Let's go. Sorry, I had to jump in.
Yeah,
that's right.
Missy's like a super fan of World of Warcraft, by the way. So
Well,
you're
Yeah.
talking right up his alley, man.
That's awesome. So I was in charge. One of the teams I was in charge of was the class design team. And so I know why we made the changes, like we didn't change it to piss off the
I mean,
talent.
to be fair, Drain Life was fucking cracked at the time. I know, it was Warlocks were unbelievable, unbelievably cracked in PvP at the time. So when I read the
Yes.
story, I was like, bro, get the fuck out of here! Like, why are you mad about this? It was
Yeah.
good balancing.
I mean, there's balancing. I mean, it's a complex thing to balance it. You're balancing PvE and PvP, which makes it really tough. But also, it's like at the time, it was like a 17-year-old game. So we got to come out with new dungeon content, with new mechanics, and so you need to adjust the classes to be able to take on those new challenges, right? So it was all to just create, compelling content for a game that had been around for so long. And so, anyways, all of that, I started to sort of see the possibilities with blockchain. I mean, the idea of digital item sales has been in our world in games for a long time, right? Especially World of Warcraft, right? Gray markets were massive. And so I left Blizzard pretty much within like a couple of weeks. I actually met on Twitter randomly. I met Gabby from YGG. We became fast friends. I really love that dude. He's so innovative. And I left and I founded a company called Mythical Games, which was sort of an early innovator in the space. I mean, we got in the space when there was like nothing. There was 3 blockchains, right? And one of them was Tron. And I registered the company in April 2018, and then EOS Mainnet launched, May 2018. So it was really early days. And so, you got into the space and you go, wow, there's so much we could do. We could build games, we can build wallets, marketplace tech, like all the stuff. Polygon, they were before they rebranded, they were called Matic. I mean, these guys were just getting off the ground. OpenSea were just like a couple of guys, right? Like it was all early days. And so, I spent 4.5 years building that company. It was a ton of fun. It was a roller coaster, dealing with all the technology, dealing all with the regulations, obviously massive topic especially in the US. And then the design space. Designing for Web3 is different than what we're used to in Web2. But it was awesome. And so 4.5 years, we hit unicorn status in 2021. I ended up developing sort of a new perspective on the space that compelled me to leave in 2022 and explore new horizons. And, I went around, I went to Dubai for a while, who are, incredibly like forward thinking when it comes to Web3 and regulations. And I wanted to explore, I'd just done a startup in the US. I wanted to explore and see how other countries were doing it. And that all led to where I am today, which is a new venture called Emberlight.
Dude, that is such an amazing story, man. I mean, there's so much to touch on, right? But I just want to say that you do have an amazing like trajectory of like, I guess, work history when it comes to like the video game world, and it's really cool to see your perspective, right? Because not oftentimes, like what you were mentioning about, yo, let's go, we got Jackie, one of our number
Shout
one
out
viewers.
Jackie.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She's always here, man, representing. Let's go. What is up, Jackie? I'll talk to the viewers in just a second because we are giving away some Planet Mojo's packs. So definitely stick around for that. But yeah, man, going back to the conversation, it's really cool to see your perspective, right? Just like what you were mentioning with the World of Warcraft and making the decisions to change the the what was it, the Warlock or like
Warlock class.
the warlock class, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
And
you know,
I
like
got a couple questions about that, but go ahead. Go ahead.
no, yeah,
First.
I'm glad you do because all I was gonna say is that not often do you get to see somebody in the developing team, right, give their takes or like say like, hey, I know why we made those changes and why those changes are necessary, which I think is a kind of like a not a conflict, but it's a bridge that's never built between the consumer and the producer, right, in Web2. Like consumers in Web2 don't have that direct audience with developing teams to talk about these changes or like even bring up their suggestions, right? Which is something that we have access to being so early in Web3, right? And we talk about this internally all the time and how no matter what stage of development games are on right now, we just got to appreciate the fact that we're in so early that us as content creators or consumers, right, can have a connection and a line of communication with these games and the developing teams, right? Where we can say, hey, I don't advise, that's not a good idea. Don't make that change. Or maybe like keep going down this path. That's what we want. So yeah, Missy, go ahead, man. I know you have some questions about this topic.
No, I mean, I think it's really cool to have someone that's like that had played a role in class design, right? At, I I remember when that patch actually happened. I was like in middle school, and warlocks were practically tanks, because it was in BC, and you literally had them tanking in Gruul's Lair at the time because they were so cracked. And I wanted to know, like, what is the process of class design go? Like, what was your favorite class? And can you please finally confirm that Blizzard does have a bias for mages? Obviously, I'm kidding, but yeah, like I would love to hear more about your process as like a class design team member for Blizzard.
Yeah, coming in to a game that was already incredibly popular, incredibly well established, right? There's a framework in place that exists. That's awesome, right? You're kind of coming in, and that's such a great thing to come into, right? Like a massively popular game, people are engaging, they have their favorite class, they have their favorite experiences. I remember being at BlizzCon, signing autographs, and people come up to me and say, "I met my wife or husband in World of Warcraft," or I got a
Yep,
tattoo
the
of,
original eHarmony, man.
and so, I mean, it's cool to be part of something that has such a massive impact. And, it's humbling, right? Like I played a small role in such a massive, massive thing, right? So, but so I started out as a rogue. I got into I was a big PvP fan. I wouldn't say I was very good. I just loved playing it. And then later in my playing career, I got into priest. I loved disc priest and PvP, just so strong. I started to learn in PvE more about tanking and healing and those kind of support roles, because usually I was more DPS, because I love DPS.
We
And
all do.
yeah,
Every healer is just a homie that wasn't good enough at DPS that got stuck to healing. No one actually likes healing.
well, that's why the disc priest was so good, right? Because you could flip.
Yeah.
I loved
Yep.
getting the kills at the end. You support the team, and then you see someone really low on health, and you go in and you get the kill. It's awesome.
Yep. I
So
love
yeah,
this.
I mean the process.
That sounds like a role for Hado. Just saying.
No, I'm a DPS player. Don't try that.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, it was it was all about creating, keeping it fresh for players, right? Something new. It couldn't go stagnant. We needed new dungeons with new bosses that had new challenges, right? And those new challenges, healing's boring. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, you kind of like it. What's funny about it is that you're the one keeping everyone alive, but as soon as someone dies, you're the one who gets all the blame. And it's like, wait, I've been keeping
Dude,
everyone alive for like 3 hours here. Come on, I needed a drink.
they're
and then you died.
so
That is so
underappreciated.
That
They're
is
so underappreciated.
It's like you've been healing them the whole match, and then the one
Yeah,
moment they die, it's like,
totally.
hey, like what's going on?
It's like, stop standing in the circle. Stop standing in the circle. Of course, you're gonna die.
Stop going for kills. You're supposed to be healing. It's like what?
So yeah, I mean, I think World of Warcraft set me up quite well for Web3. I mean, you mentioned community. I think that's one of the most amazing things about Web3. I feel like it's much more community driven. This is what I was saying about Club Penguin back in the day, right? Like, I mean, it was a community first experience. A lot of the stuff that we put in Club Penguin were just directly from our community saying, like there was a card game called Cardjitsu, which was based on the whole ninja lore. And it didn't exist on the island, and one day the players started going, oh, we think there are ninjas there. They would look at shadows and stuff like that. We never put anything in there. It was just they were making up this whole narrative, right? And so we went, yeah, let's make a game out of that, right? And so Web3, I feel like, yes, now because it's small, you get to talk to all the developers, but I hope that we don't lose that, because I think that's just such a powerful part of Web3. It's like players are partners now. That's what I love about it, right? Like you're not only like having fun, but you might also have like be participating in the token economy. So you have vested interest in the ecosystem. And so it's like we're partners. It's a partnership ecosystem, which I love.
Well, that leads to my next point, right? Which is the the fact that that's the culture that we're building here in Web3, right? And we talk about it all the time. We want the traditional market to come and be part of Web3, right? Like we want like the Activisions to come and develop games in Web3, right? But we don't want them to change the culture that we're building. We want them to adopt that culture, right? So if our culture is that we have that partnership between gamers and developing teams, right? And we have that open communication for the developing cycle, that's something that should stick around no matter what size of the industry is around, right? Like if we have this massive AAA studios creating games in Web3, they shouldn't come in and try to bring their culture from the traditional market into our ecosystem. It's more like they should come in and learn about the culture that we're building here and integrate those new levels of technology and blockchain that we're integrating into games here, so that we can allow that type of ownership and involvement, right?
Mhm.
From the consumer side. So yeah,
Yeah,
man,
I mean,
I agree with that.
we have mechanics too now that we didn't have before, right? Like governance, like staking and rewards. These are kind of things that allow for players to participate in decision making and voting. And, I think it's so exciting. I think these are things that really need to be put in the spotlight, right? I mean, everybody talks about in the Web2 space is like focused on NFTs. And yeah, NFTs is part of it, but there's so much more that can
Yeah.
be done with Web3.
Well, like taking it back to Club Penguin, for example, right? Like that was a game that was so far ahead of its time, right? Like there was so many experiences inside that game. Like you mentioned, it was the first metaverse, right? Because it did give you that type of experience when you were playing it, right? But for example, like other games like what was I gonna say, man? I had a good example for this. Uh dang it, I lost it. I lost it. But anyways, like games that create those type of experiences, right, is what we need here in Web3, right? Like we need that type of like level of interaction within a game that's gonna allow players to, continue to develop that player economy within a game, right?
And,
So I
and
think integrating the tools. Oh, I remember now. The example I was going to give was a game like Fortnite, right? For example, Fortnite has developed so many new experiences for gamers, right, inside their ecosystem, and just with the Unreal Engine creative map that they have, right, where players can go in there and create their own experiences inside Fortnite and use all of their tools and assets that they have in their ecosystem, right? For you to recreate your own game and your own experience and basically provide that to your fandom and crowd that you have, right? So I think, I agree with you. There's so many new tools and AI is continuing to advance that is helping a lot with the developing cycles of games and just opening the field to more of the casual developers to have also like a big chance at creating something really cool.
yeah, and I want to mention on top of that you bring up Fortnite. That's just pure community driven. I like to look at examples of like, because I know the community can be susceptible to things. So like there's also like a little bit of gatekeeping with it because you want to make sure that people aren't just doing nefarious things with a community, right? So community like vets itself and stuff. And I think like some examples like the Bugatti, not the Bugatti, it was a car, was it Aston Martin that like tried to do something and then it just kind of flopped. And it's like you don't know the community and the culture
I know
behind
Porsche.
Web3.
Porsche. That was
Porsche,
Porsche did
Porsche.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a bit of gatekeeping, but it's like not to like say you can't enter us. Like it's like this is the culture, this is the way of life, and we're protecting the culture, right? So I think that that's what games should take the approach when they're coming from Web 2 to Web 3 is like embrace that culture and use it for the community's benefit.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, my learning over the last 5 years of being in the space has been I kind of got into it going, hey, blockchain's a cool technology, and what a shift that's going to be. But it's a cultural shift too. And I remember, some of my things that I've been involved in Web3. I did a really fun partnership with Burberry and mainstream brands out there. And it is a cultural shift. It's not just a technological shift, but you have to think differently coming into the space. And that I think is what makes it such an exciting space. But it also creates challenges, right? Because you've got this sort of world that has been doing one thing for so long, and now you're going, hey, you need to forget that. There's this new way of doing things. You got to switch your thinking, right? Even just something as simple. I remember doing an agreement with someone with a company. I won't name names, but it was like they wanted to own, everything to do with their IP, right? I mean, that's a normal thing. That's not unusual. They go, okay, if our IP's on it, it's owned by us, right? And then you have to kind of go, well, if it's an NFT and someone buys the NFT, that's not how it works, right? You have to think of it differently. It's like if I were to go and buy a bicycle, like from a store, like I own that bicycle now, right? Like it's you can't just sort of take it back when you want it. Or if I'm wearing Adidas with Nike, they can't get mad at me, right? Like I own those things. Like I can put them together the way I want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Hado.
I was gonna say I have an artist friend that had the exact same dilemma when he was considering creating art, and I was like, yeah, it's not really your IP if you're making a bunch of different, copies of the IP, or not copies, but like different variations of that IP. It's kind of like your community's IP in a way. Like you may have some guidelines you set up or whatever, but they're free to do whatever. They could put that on a wine bottle. They could put it on hats.
Well, that's the
whatever.
thing. There was a time period in Web3 where IP rights was something that was not clearly defined within the contract, right? And you had to really get into details to really know what your IP rights really like allow, right? Because there was a lot of companies that were just kind of promoted as like, no, yeah, you have full IP ownership. And as soon as this members of the community started utilizing their IP, like creating brands with them, like restaurants or products or like a chocolate bar or whatever it was, right? And the original creators of the brand, right, started seeing that people were profiting of their design and IP. They started like going back on their terms and going like, no, wait, hold up. You can use your IP this way, but you can't really use it for consumer goods or like to make a profit out of it, And they started making different regulations. So it got really messy there for a while, but there are NFT projects that give you full IP ownership, and you have the rights to use it as however you like, and create your own brand with them. And I think that's the coolest part, right? Like brands have figured out a way to allow that. And, there can still be some type of royalty involved, if you do sell that on the secondary, you end up selling your IP or whatever it is, your brand. There can maybe be a royalty always involved to the original creator, but I think brands that have figured out full ownership capacities are the reason why I joined Web3 in the first place, right? I wanted that ownership. But now going back to what you guys were saying a little bit and what Hado said in the beginning, I also think Hado, what you mentioned with Porsche, there's a place for everyone in Web3. And there's different cultures that you can attack in Web3, right? Like there's the PFP culture, there's like the collectible culture, and then there's Web3 gaming culture, right? And they're all very different because, for example, Starbucks was somebody that figured out how to do a Web3 experience successfully, And I think it was up until recently that they decided to close the program. But for a while, they ran it pretty well. It was a rewards program, all in the blockchain, right? That was the culture that they decided to attack. I think another person that did it similarly was Hello Kitty, right? With like the passports things that they did a while back or whatever. But, when you're talking about Web3 gaming, it's very different because you got to hit the culture of Web3, which is the ownership, the economy models, all that type of things, right? But you also got to hit the gaming culture. You got to hit the gamers and what they want to see in games and what they are interested in, right? And what they want to make content around and stuff like that. So it's a lot more difficult to figure that out for people that are entering this space and thinking, oh, I can create a game because that's the fastest growing industry right now. It's like the fastest way to acquire users into a product, right? So I can come in here and create a game, but they don't know anything about what gamers really want. So that's like there's a big difference between that entry level of entrance to Web3, if you're entering Web3 gaming.
One thing that I wanted to jump in and ask Rudy is because he mentioned that his experience at I almost said Pudgy Penguins. Club Penguin was very similar to almost like a Web3 game, right? Everything was taken from the community, and I would love to see you like compare, and I would also love to learn more about Emberlight as well, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you can answer the question in whatever order you want, but I feel like they're all interconnected in one way. So like WoW had a very, very robust like forums community, right? Like that is where WoW thrived. Everyone was uploading their builds to the forums. Everyone would, destroy the devs in the forums. Let's call it for what it is. Like, holy shit, were those forums toxic if you were a dev. And then how much of that like played into the actual decision making at WoW, right? And then like how does that compare to Club Penguin and what you've seen in Web3?
Yeah,
Because like I would say that those forums sometimes felt like they had some influence, but then other times it was kind of like it didn't have any influence.
yeah. I mean, you know, I'll use Club Penguin as a great example because it was, again, they did some things way before anybody else really picked up on it. And so, yes, community is one of those things, but the other where they were sort of community first, but they were also very, when it comes to community first, it was also listening to see what the issues were, right? And in order to, you know, the big shift here was that it was one of the first games as a service, right? Like up until Club Penguin, a lot of the box games, right, like were retail. You go buy them. Even World of Warcraft, you go buy. Even though it was games as a service, it was kind of like a box game, right? So Club Penguin was one of those that was like, you know, if there was a problem, we could fix it the next day, right? Like if the community responded poorly to something that we put out, we could change it the next day. And this was a massive, like at the time, now you're like, of course. But at the time, like this is, we're talking like 2009, like that was unheard of in this space, right? You would put out a game, you'd need at least 2 months to press the disc and get it shipped out to, you know, Best Buys around the world or whatever, right? Um, and then, you know, like we were just starting to do sort of patches, but they were like, you know, like for critical issues, you know, in a games of service like Club Penguin, you could switch gears very quickly, very easily. You could change, tweak, you know, and that was, I think, part of the amazingness of it is because not only did the community, you know, we address issues, but community became huge advocates because they were like, yeah, they're listening to us, right? The other thing I'll lean into is sort of not necessarily community driven is the Club Penguin was, you know, why I call it the metaverse is because it tapped into that sort of like online kind of identity piece, right? Like when we, you know, one of the reasons why I think today Web3 works so well and NFTs are so important because, you know, the younger generation of gamers are spending a lot of time online. They're spending a lot of time in these digital spaces, right? And they want items. They want to be able to flex, right? Fortnite, great example. You got skins you want to flex, right? And you know, and so, you know, I think about, you know, my generation, the older generation, I have like comics and collectibles, physical stuff that I love collecting, but they're also an expression of who I am in the physical space, right? And so NFTs and digital items become an expression of who you are in the digital space, and I think that's why value is so, you know, that's why there's value there. That's why people are getting it, right? And Club Penguin, even though they weren't NFTs, you know, had items. You could dress up your penguin. You could create an identity. You could go and you were on an island with all the other penguins and see what they were wearing. And, you know, that was a large part of it. And I think that was another example of how they sort of hit something pretty early before we even knew it was something that was important. And so now shifting into sort of Web3, you know, these are the kinds of concepts that are exciting and interesting, right? Like, you know, these are the things that are kind of shifting the way we think about how we design these experiences. And yeah, community plays a big role in that because, and this is why I say partnership, players are a partner in this ecosystem, is because they are the ones who define value, right? Like they're the ones who decide what skin in Fortnite's cool and what's not, right? Like that's not necessarily developers. And so there needs to be more of a, I feel, a more of a sort of coming together between developers and players. And we need to sort of let go of that sort of one-way street that it has been, you know, in Web 2, where I'm just making a game, I'm marketing it to you like a movie, and you either buy it or you don't, but that's really it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I 100% agree with you. And, you know, you mentioned a lot of like, I just noticed my camera is moving on me. There we go.
I
All
thought you
right.
just
Sorry
wanted
about that.
that view for the day.
Yeah, they wanted to go to the corner or something. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you 100%, right? Like, you know, you mentioned something of games that do it community driven, right? And are listening to what the community is really saying and advocating for, right? Those are the titles that lead to successful titles, right? And I think of a title like Call of Duty, and I think that's where all of it went wrong, right? Because You can
Harsh.
ask the rest of the guy. I mean, I'm gonna be harsh because it's a game that I play for majority of my life. You get me? I dedicated like 13 years to that title. I've been playing Call of Duty since Call of Duty 2, all the way till like I think I stopped playing it in whatever was before the latest one, like I think it was like a Modern Warfare remake or something like that. But anyways, like I stopped playing because ever since, like I would say ever since Ghost, we were saying to that developing team, hey, implement these changes. We want this for the betterment of the game. It runs so much smoother. You've done it in previous titles and it works. We didn't want those things to be changed, and that the Activision proved many times that they weren't interested in listening to, especially to the pro player scenes, right? They weren't interested in listening to what the esports players were telling them to change to make a better game, right? They were more interested in like what does the casual player want, because that's who's playing the game the most, right? Like that's how we're getting the sales the most, is what do the casual players want to play inside the game? Do they want a BR? Do they want skill-based matchmaking, right? Like do they want all these things to have a better experience? Let's give them those changes. And then they were ignoring like the competitive side of things, right? And the mechanics and tools that we were needing for a balanced game.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think a company like that type of franchise. I'm not saying Call of Duty is not successful. I mean, I think only a fool will say that Call of Duty is not a successful franchise, right? Obviously, it's one of the biggest titles to this date, and it still proves every year that it can get sales and it dominates probably the FPS scene, right? But as a player, as a fan of the franchise that loved that franchise for so many years, and like you said, it was a part of me, right? A representative part of who I am, who I
Mhm.
was. I don't know, man. It felt like there was never that connection of a player to the developing side, and like whatever we voice as players and competitive players, it didn't really matter, So
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it was
part of the
just
reason why I made that leap into Web3.
yeah, I mean, it was just a different way of thinking back then, right? Like Club Penguin wasn't the norm; it was the outlier, right? Being community driven. A lot of the Web 2 way of thinking was the way Activision was doing it. And yeah, massive, massive success. And the thing is, like creating great games is a skill, right? You can get a bunch of really experienced game designers in a room, and they'll probably create something awesome, right? Because it's a skill. And I think the shift though here is that this is again Web 3 is sort of just reshaping that relationship, right? It's going, okay, you can still be experts, you can still create great games, but there's just a shifting of the relationship between player, developer, and the game ecosystem. And I think that's super profound, right? Where I think we'll see, get like ecosystems like Club Penguin become maybe more of the norm thanks to Web 3. But I think it's going to be like we talked about IP ownership and the companies struggling, Web 2 companies struggling with that concept, right? Like we're also seeing Web 2 game companies struggling with that shift as well. And so, it's not just technology, it's not just cultural, it's regulatory. Like there's all kinds of complexity here that we've got to work through. And that's why it's been a bit of a roller coaster over the last 5 years. And it's a bit more of a long adoption cycle, but I think it's going to be the most profound shift in the industry we've ever had, once we get through it.
I just want to say, whoever makes Web 3 Black Ops 3, I will never get off that game. I will play it every single day because that was my favorite game out of the whole entire Call of Duty series. I know a very unpopular opinion, but I love the exosuits. I love the fact that in Nuketown you can run from one side of the map to the other and never touch the ground. And I want that in Web 3. So please bring that to me, and I will never get off that game.
Man, we just need Nuketown and Web 3. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nuketown, what a vibe, man! What a time to be alive. I'll never
Yeah.
forget my first time logging into Nuketown. Holy shit!
It's the best 1v1 map ever created. If you weren't doing 1v1s in Nuketown, you weren't really, you weren't talking shit online then, you know. But no, man, I love the going back in time and like kind of getting to know your history a little bit. But let's move forward a little bit more and talk about what you have going on today and kind of like what your focus is on in Web3 right now, right? Which is Emberlight. Can you tell us and anyone in the audience that is just discovering what Emberlight is, right, and wants to know a little bit more, kind of give us like the little backstory on the company and like what your focus is with the brand, and what you guys are aiming to solve or bring value to the Web3 community with.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emberlight is a Web3 tech company, new venture that I'm part of, focused on the Web3 games and the gaming industry as a whole. I've talked to a lot of amazing game developers, over the last 5 years, and especially in the last year, I spoke to so many, especially with the bear market, the challenges that everybody had during 2023. But I started to see some common problems, right? And Emberlight was sort of a response to those problems. And the big one was the complexity. There's an enormous amount of complexity still in Web3, right? Like I said that 5 years ago when I got into space, there was 3 blockchains. I mean, now there's over 50. There's tons of wallets. There's on-off ramps. There's KYC. There's AML. There's payment processors. On-chain Alex. I mean, the rabbit hole goes really, really deep, right? And if you're a game team, we want to create a clear path for game teams to come in and build. We want more content, right? We're just at the beginning of all of this. So in order to do that, we need to give them a clear path. We need to simplify all this. You've got game teams that I talk to in Web2 who are coming into the space and going, I don't even know where to start, right? I just want to make a game. And now I have to go evaluate like 20 KYC providers. Like, I don't even know how to do that, right? And then I don't even know what I need, right? Like, I need a blockchain, and then what? And like, how do I make a decision on a wallet, right? And, so we're tackling those kind of complexities with the tech that we're building. The other piece of complexity is around tokenomics, right? Again, a lot of game teams coming into space don't know what they don't know, and it's tough. I remember getting in, and I'm like talking to people about market making and OTCs and trading desks, and I've been making games for 20 years. I'd never heard of any of those things, right? And suddenly I had to know, and I had to be an expert in sort of distribution and like supply and demand economics, which is way out of the scope of what game developers are used to, right? And it's complex, right? And then the third piece that we kept hearing was around some of these really innovative mechanisms like staking and rewards, node ownership, decentralization. Like the Web2 community has heard all about it, right? But if you want to come and integrate and implement those things, where do you start? How do you do that, right? If I want to make a game in Web2 and I want to monetize, there's like APIs, there's SDKs, there's libraries, there's all kinds of support. You go on iOS, they have in-app purchases. It's really easy, right? But in Web3, like the path is not clear. And so my perspective is that that is a barrier now. It's great that we have all this technology. It's great, right? Like we needed all of this, but now we need to simplify and be like, okay, here's the path, right? So there's 2 pieces of tech that we've built. One we call the Pollinate SDK, and the Pollinate SDK is around solving the first 2 problems: the fragmentation of technology and the tokenization piece. And what it is basically an aggregation of what we consider some of the best tech folks in the space, right? The tech providers in the space. Like we announced a cross-chain partnership with Analog, for example. We've announced with Stardust as a wallet as a service. We want to be able to give developers an SDK and say, hey, it's got all of these great teams plugged in, right? The market is still new, it's still small, and you've got all these amazing tech providers. And one of the things that was important to me was to support them all. I wanted to make sure that you're coming into space to build a game, who all the best teams are. And so what we do is, again, we give you an SDK. It has all of these tech providers plugged in, and you just can build your game and not worry about what's underneath, right? And so the same applies for the tokenomic stuff, deploying smart contracts. Again, how do you plug in market makers? How do you deploy tokenized economies? How do you manage them? How do you manage volatility? My co-founder comes from that world of investment banking and algo trading and prop trading, and in finance, all that stuff is like easy. Like they do it in their sleep, right? So we wanted to bring a lot of that stuff in to support teams, right? And we just want to take the complexity away. We want teams to be building great games, not worrying about what percentage of supply they have to loan to a market maker in order to take their token to market, right? And so that's the Pollinate. And then Starling's network is the other tech. And this is a protocol. This is basically a blockchain protocol. But the goal of this is to simplify staking and rewards node ownership, fractional ownership, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a racing game, and you have, as a player, you have a garage in that racing game. That garage is an NFT, but the developers linked it to nodes on the Starlings network. So when I, as a player, buy that garage or acquire that garage, I've acquired a node that starts to mine game rewards, right? And it's all managed on like a decentralized network with consensus and validation. And then the developer can set all kinds of rules around it. Like, the more cars I put in the garage, the faster the mining algorithm goes, or the more times I log in a week, or the higher I am on the leaderboard, right? And so the idea here is we've allowed staking and rewards, right? This is something we know to be extremely strong in Web3. But instead of going to a website and a dashboard and linking your wallet, you're just a player who has a garage, and you're putting cars in a garage, and that's a mechanic I'm familiar with, right? For 40 years, right? So, and then we can expand that in other use cases, right? Like a guild hall, like a whole guild owns a guild hall, and that's a node on the network, and the guild can contribute and have fractional ownership to the rewards that are generated, right? So we're going deep on those things to, again, provide a clear path and make it easy, because we think these kind of mechanics are super strong, and super strong at growing community, super strong at retention. But someone needs to be making it easy for developers, and someone needs to be making it so that it's an experience for players, not a dashboard.
Hallelujah, man. That sounds great. It's like music to my ears to hear this kind of language being spoke, because a lot of these games are exactly what you're saying. They focus on too many things and not the game. And then you have game or developers or publishers, I don't even know what to call them, in this space that are working on multiple games, right? Instead of just working on one game and making sure that one game runs really well. So I'm really happy to hear that you're taking out the complexity of the thing, because they do dabble in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a little bit more sympathy to developing teams this time around, right? Because hearing Rudy talk about it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, right? And it's like they're kind of forced to, man, right? Like Rudy says, I think access and use of access and educations are two huge barriers that we're still dealing with in Web3, right? And when a gaming developing team comes into this world, right, like they're forced to kind of like start understanding, like, okay, how do I implement this for like node ownership and economy models and tokenomics, right? And like how, which is not part of traditional gaming developing, right? So like you really don't have to worry about those things if you're just creating a game. But when you're creating a game with blockchain technology, you have to worry about those things. And then when you go try to find the education to try to apply those things, there is none, right? Because I can tell you, I'm nowhere near like a developer's level of integration for those tools, right? But as a content creator in this space, right, if I wanted to make content talking about tokenomics or like breaking down an economy model from a game, right, I still want to know that I'm giving valuable information to the consumer that's consuming my content, right? So I'm going to want to familiarize myself with those terms and those tools and like what it means to have an economy model. So I went through the process of like searching for educational pieces or educational content to help me with that. And it was one of the hardest things to find out there. There's nobody making this type of content or facilitating, right, the use of these tools or understanding what these economy models are or like what these tokens are used for and blah blah blah, right? So I'm glad to hear you guys say that that's your main focus, right? It's use of access, not only for the developers but for the user as well, right? Like what you're mentioning is basically making the experience of staking way more easy to understand than going to a dashboard and just seeing your tokens or your asset being locked up somewhere and you're like, wait, did I just make a mistake clicking this thing that now I can't get back until like 6 months go by?
Yep.
Like what the fuck is going on, right? And making it as simple as like, hey, I'm playing a racing game, I'm staking my car. That means I'm going to have it parked in my garage and it's just going to be showcasing there for a while. I'm not going to be able to race it or whatever. That's something that I'm way more comfortable with than just locking it in some random website that I don't know if it's going to crash tomorrow and I'm never going to get my asset back.
It sounds very GTA like, the putting the car into the garage.
Well,
Yeah.
what I love too is that some of the things that we're exploring is like like you can be a node owner, like you could be a garage owner, right? And you can actually set some of the economics for that node, right? And for that garage. And so maybe, you know, it's a game where other people can, you know, put their cars in your garage, right? And, you know, that, you know, and they're doing that based on the economics that you've set, right? And so again, it's like we're focused on the game and the player experience, but we're taking some of these things that we've seen to be so cool and so powerful in Web3, making them palatable for people. And so, you know, we want to continue to sort of build tech along those lines. And one thing I'll mention too is like when free to play came about, right? There was a bunch of stuff we had to learn as a gaming industry, right? Like product managers didn't exist before free to play, right? Like, and what we did was we went and hired analysts from like McKinsey and like taught them games, and they became like data driven product managers who could design free to play economies, right? And so now with Web3, what we're doing is, you know, we've got my co-founder Antonio, who comes from finance, right? He's got that new expertise, in my opinion, that needs to be sort of mashed together with game expertise to sort of breed this sort of new expertise that we need in order to create Web3 games, right? And so, you know, we're just excited to be in that space and executing in this way because, you know, we think it's just so important to make it easy for developers to get in and make lots of content. That's what I want to see this year, 2024. I just want to see a ton of great content coming out.
On that note, will you be able to allow us to name our garage? Because if we could name the garage, we could then brag about. I'm just thinking of like West Coast Customs right now for my name of the garage. So that'd be something fun to show off. Like, this is West Coast Customs. Come steak with us.
Love it. Absolutely. Come steak with us. That's awesome. But, you know, that can translate to anything, right? Like we're talking another game who wants to have it be a mothership in space, right? Like it could be anything as a game designer you can think of, right? You just have to go, this NFT that we've come up with, this links to a node. And so when you have this NFT, you are a node owner. But the player doesn't really know behind the scenes. They just know that this mothership or this garage or this guild hall is generating rewards for them.
You know, to hop in real quick, I love this concept. And, you know, I would say out of our group, I'm always the one that focuses on the economy as far as like, obviously I'm a gamer. I love gaming, but I really don't associate with projects that I can't see an economy taking shape. And, you know, I'm kind of like the grift, like the dog in the group that sniffs out the grifters, right? Like, you know, there is a lot of games that want to get Web3 liquidity, but they don't want to stay true to what the ethos is or finding a way to, you know, take risks on economies because that's what you're doing. And I do feel for the developers because, you know, I was having a conversation literally yesterday where I was telling a developer, so what is your plan for like market making? And they're like, what the fuck do you mean? I'm just like, can't launch a token without market making, man. Like, you gotta have you gotta stabilize it, right? Like you need to be talking to these companies that specialize in this type of software. And
that was me 5 years ago.
Yeah, they're just like, what the fuck do you mean? I'm just like, I mean, what the fuck do you mean? What the fuck do I mean? Like, it's if you're gonna be in Web3, you gotta be in it. Like, and unfortunately, like there's so many moving parts, you know, and like if you're gonna do market making for tokens, you also need market making for NFTs. How are you gonna make all these syncs for the token inside of the game? Like, there's so many things, and hearing a way that's like way more gamer centric is very exciting. To someone like me, because like there's a content piece that some games occasionally like pay me to create or sponsor me to create, and it's I write like full-blown overview guides on how the token works inside of the economy as well as the gameplay. And it's not something that I do often because there's not that many games that actually have it, right? It's something that it's like, okay, we have this game and it has cool gameplay, or we have this game and it has a great economy. But a lot of the times that's when you really realize like how well thought out is this token or these assets, because if I can't make this thread seamlessly, like you have a bigger issue at hand than getting users, right? Like once you get those users, you could fucking kiss them goodbye after a certain period of time because something at a certain point is going to break. And I think you guys being able to like essentially democratize the process for developers is huge. Like honestly, like one of the best use cases I've heard of this year so far, because it's a more common problem than people think.
I agree. I mean, you know, like game teams I've seen who are masters of their craft coming into the space. They put a ton of energy and time into the game, and then they just kind of get stuck on the economy and they YOLO something out the door. And it's like, this is not going to make sense, or it's not going to work. And they don't know, and it's not that they're not capable or smart. It's just, it's such a new concept. It's things we've just never dealt with before. And so, we want to help teams with that, because we think that, obviously, I think you're clearly expressing it, is that the economy is just as much of the experience, part of the experience the game is itself. And so it's important that we are able to go deep and create economies that make sense. And
Exactly.
and so, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I met a team last year. This is one of the, I was mentioning, we talked to a lot of teams. One team was like, we've got this amazing game, but we're burning like $600,000 a month trying to figure out like the Web3 pieces. And I was like, what? Like, and this is in a,
My
bear market.
God, that is
They're
horrible.
running out of money. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, that's
Yeah.
insane. Right. But that's unfortunately the challenge, right? You coming into the space, unless you're working with, a team like us, you're kind of on your own, having to figure all this out. And it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And I mean, it's one of those industries where the service varies based on who you're talking to, right? Like the rate, what country are they coming from, who's in their network. Like, there is no, like, I get all the time, so what's the average rate? And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Depends the day of the week, really. Uh, that's just
Yeah.
how it goes. Supply,
Depends on
demand,
the
all that
narrative.
stuff.
It depends on the narrative
Um,
of the week too.
yeah. So it's, and something that a product like this really helps with is, one of my most hated takes in this space, and yes, like, it's gonna sound counterintuitive considering like Catalyst is a gaming first brand, is we just want fun games. Like, if you want just fun games, go to Web2, bro. We want fun games that have vibrant Web3 economies. That's what we actually want. If we wanted just fun games, like, I mean, go to Steam, go to Epic. There's plenty of those. I want fun Web3 games, like, and the Web3 has to come first, in my opinion. Like, otherwise, what makes it a Web3 game? So I'm super bullish on this use case, like, genuinely, because
Awesome.
I'm kind of tired of hearing like people either fuck up the economy or fuck up all the intricacies that go into it, or just decide to basically grift away from it because it's too complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
YOLO
I
is
can
like
get
the
behind that.
perfect.
I can get behind that take, man. I mean, I think, I think Web3 already has fun titles. Like, we have fun games. I think what we also need is completed experiences, right? We need a product that's a full experience that people can actually, enjoy and build upon, right? And for that economy model to be on the same level as well, right? For things to make sense, for the token to have some type of actual like user case and like actual value, so I think that's more so of what we need in Web3. It's more completed experiences, right? Like, we need a gaming developing team that really focuses on just like implementing their funds correctly and like completing their games. And I think once we have a full on completed game into Web3 that hits all the marks, right? It's fun, it has a good economy model, it has good ownership and good DAUs, right? Like, then we'll have everything we want in the space, as far as like what we want to get out of gaming, right? Because I mean, I think, like, if I look at my traditional gaming experience, I never play as much MMOs as I have being in Web3, right? Like, if I was playing my Xbox or my PS5 or whatever, Steam, I would be playing FPS all day long, right? There's enough titles in there for me to like never touching MMO ever in my life, right? But being in Web3, I've been able to enjoy different genres that I still enjoy playing. I just never really had the chance to grind them out. But not having a full-on completed FPS, for example, allowed me to explore that, right? And kind of figure out, okay, who's building out cool products inside this space. And now I just want to see those cool products be finished, right? So I think hopefully, having places products like yours, Rudy, like Emberlight, it just makes everything easier. It's a all-in-one platform. Everything you need as a developing team is going to be in there. It's going to be, like I said, use of access, right? It's going to make things easier, to clearer to use, right? Which is something that we need in the space. We had a similar complexity problem when games were asking users to always sign in with their MetaMask, right? And that was the only way to sign into the game. It was if you had a MetaMask wallet, right, or some type of wallet, and that's the only way to get inside the game. And as the community started complaining about that and how difficult it was and how many steps they had to go into and how they didn't feel comfortable signing a transaction just to get inside a game and trying it out, right? We started seeing that shift into, okay, now you can use your Gmail, now you can use your Apple account or whatever, to sign in. So I think dealing with those complexity, like you mentioned earlier, is something that is in major need still in the space of Web3. So I'm super excited to see you guys be into the space and providing this value to developers.
And I
Hey,
think there's a lot of creative ways to get there too. Like this in-game example of you staking makes you think about going in-game and just like logging in like with your wallet or something that's more natural to gamers. I mean, people can play GTA RP for years upon years and use a fake phone and use a fake Twitter and all that stuff. They could easily be well, I don't want to say programmed, but they can easily be programmed to use something like that in Web3 as well. This is built into the game.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, listen, like I said, I love what you guys have going on in Emberlight. I'm excited to continue learning about it. Just out of curiosity, is there any like particular games or developing teams that you guys are working with that are already using your platform or product already into their
yeah,
cycles?
we haven't done any formal announcements, but I'll share here we did an AMA with a team called Revolving Games in January, who we're very tightly aligned with. These guys come from Web 2. You may be familiar with them. They've been in the space for Web 3 now for a little while, but they
Yeah.
come. What I love about them, they come from Web 2, right? Like they were like a team that was with Scopely, with a Kabam, right? Like they cut their teeth on like big games, and now they're in Web 3, and they're a really smart group. They're also backed by Dan Hauser, who founded Rockstar, right? So they've got that like big Web 2 sort of presence coming into Web 3, and I'm really excited about the stuff that they're doing. And yeah, we did an AMA with them in January, we've been secretly building some stuff with them. So we haven't shared it yet, but that will be soon.
Hey, there you go. Some alpha, some alpha. We love getting alpha in the show, so that's awesome, man. I'm excited. Like, obviously someone like having someone like the backing of like someone who built Rockstar, whether it's advising you or is part officially of your team, that's a huge, huge thing to have behind you and your shoulders. I mean, Rockstar is a major brand when it comes to games, and being building games with longevity. I think that's like one of the things that I respect about Rockstars the most. I remember years down the line when they made backwards compatible a thing and they brought back Bully into the Xbox marketplace. I downloaded that thing so quickly and I was playing that so much, man. And it was a game that was like already like 20 years old or something like that. So I think it's awesome that they have that, and it's really cool. I'm excited to see what they built out and what you guys help them with as far as like their gaming developing cycle goes. It's gonna be really cool to see that in the space. So definitely look out for that, guys.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'll mention too, over the next few months, we'll be announcing a whole bunch of games. We've got some amazing teams that we're working with, and I'm just super pumped. I'm super pumped on the year. I'm super pumped on 2024 and Web 3 and like all the great teams in the space. And so, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a great year.
Hell yeah. Hey, actually, now that you mentioned the fact that you guys are going to be announcing other brands and stuff, I don't know why this sparked this thought in my head, but I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion on projects and brands like Guga, right? Like that have the apes, and they've gotten kind of like to dibble into the gaming world with things like Dookie Dash and all these other mini games experiences that they've created, and obviously other side, right? Like their huge metaverse that they're building, that they've been building. What's
Mm.
your opinion on like a company like that that started more as a PFP collectible, now kind of like going into the gaming world and exploring that sector? Because I know they brought people on from like Blister and stuff like that too. So just curious to get your thoughts on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome that we are in a point now where we've got brands that are homegrown in Web 3. I think that's really awesome. It's like we've spent so much time and energy looking at Web 2 brands and, bringing them into Web 3 and seeing how we could bring them into Web 3. And there's been a lot of cool stuff in that regard. But, we're now at a point where we got like just brands that were born in Web 3, they represent Web 3. And now they're going, what else can we do? What can we show the world? Right. And I think that's awesome. Pudgy Penguin's another one, right? Like I joined them recently as their chief gaming advisor, right? Another amazing brand that was, came out of Web3 and I think they stand alone in terms of the types of success that they've had. And I just want to see more and more of this stuff, right? And naturally, games is a direction that a lot of these teams will go in because, it's digital. It's great in terms of engaging community. It gives utility to these, more utility to the brands and the NFTs. And so I think that's great. And, I can't, what I think is kind of cool is that it's hard to say, like, where is the big hit Web3 game going to come from, right? Like there's a ton of Web2 innovation teams coming in and innovating. And so maybe we'll see a Web2 brand that we love become a big Web3 hit game. But it could equally be a Web3 brand that breaks out and creates a game that everybody just wants to play. And I think that's really, really cool. And, I love supporting the community because, I want to see more and more of this stuff. And I think, at some point, you're not even probably going to talk about Web 2 versus Web 3. It's all just going to be one. When you talk about games, you're going to be talking about games that have Web 3 economies, but you're just going to call them games. But right now, right, we're building the identity. We're building the strength of Web 3 and showing the world what it can do. And so brands like, Bored Ape and Pudgy are really exciting.
Yeah, dude. I personally I love that answer. I think you're right. I think we're definitely gonna see a lot of like Web3 native teams come and dominate the space for a while, especially with indie experiences, in my opinion. I think indie developing teams that are like Web3 natives are going to have the ability to produce some great experiences when it comes to games. But I also see the world that you're mentioning. I think everything's going to at one point just kind of blend in, and everything's going to be blended, right? Like Web 2 and Web 3 is just going to live together in gaming. And like you mentioned, there's going to be games that have that experiences and that technology available, and some that don't, because we already seen that kind of across the Web3 gaming space, right? We see a lot of people that have the background of working with teams like Ubisoft or Activision or like Blizzard or whatever, and kind of making either their own team or being part of a team that's more Web3 native, right? And it's kind of blending both worlds together. So, like I mentioned earlier too, with AI tools nowadays, man, I've seen some really cool gaming experiences that are coming to the space that are all about like the AI experience and utilizing AI tools to add on to the game loop, right? So that's something that I'm personally super interested as well, and seeing who explores that realms first and who figures it out, like, and comes up with something super cool. But yeah, before we move forward with our next segment, Hado, Missy, anything else you guys want to add?
I'm always a little more bullish on Web3 Web3 native teams, and that's because traditionally they just kind of get the culture more. So it'll be interesting to see how a company like Emberlight could potentially help Web2 developers close that gap. I'm usually the one guy in the crowd that when someone announces like the Bull Signal Web2 partnership, I could give a shit less traditionally because it like never turns out the way it's supposed to. So everyone's like, "Is this the Bull Signal?" And I'm just like, "Who cares, man?" Like, I'm always like bullish on that one team that like no one's talking about, and it's like a couple of like ex-degen people and then like a game dev that had some experience in Web 2 and is like trying to like go do some shit in Web 3. Like that's where I always get like super excited. Like we kind of saw that with Nine Heroes, right? Like I don't think they seem very like Web 3 native, and it's no surprise to me that they're this project that's like blowing up on the TL for being like a Web 3 game, right? And a lot of us have been filling up the lobbies even before the airdrop started. Like, I can log in at any time of the day and I'm getting lobbies in there. So it's been a lot of fun. And we've seen a similar experience with certain other games in this space, but ultimately, my biggest takeaway from this is I would love to learn more about how we could also connect games to like Emberlight and with what you guys are doing, and learn more about the product itself, because like this is in my opinion, this is like the number one issue I see, like the problem that you guys are solving when I'm talking to a team. And it's like usually like one of the biggest metrics on whether or not I think someone's bullish or not, because if I just don't feel like they're Web3 native enough, I'm instantly just like turned off. Even if the game looks good, I'm just like, I played enough good games, I need shit that feels Web3. So yeah, that's my ultimate takeaway there. And in regards to Yuga and Pudgy's, congrats on being the Pudgy's like chief gaming advisor. Makes a lot of fucking sense, because they're like, what I saw kind of reminded me of Club Penguin, right? So I was just like, like I wonder if they're talking to people from Club Penguin. And I didn't do too much research on it, but here we are. So makes a lot of sense now.
Apparently, I have a type. Penguins.
I do have one question. It kind of comes with security. So the one thing that I think that also is another big problem in Web3 is like, are these games secure? Are they not trying to mine or fish data from me or anything like that? Do you have anything in your program that kind of prevents those kind of things from happening when you're going through like a vetting process for these games?
I mean, yeah, we're working with teams that we go and do our research on. These are teams we know, and teams we have confidence in. Right, we're not in a position to be able to take on anything. So absolutely, I mean, scams hurt the industry. They hurt our perception in the sector, and we don't want to. This is too much of that, to be honest. Right, like there's a lot of people pumping transaction numbers and faking, what's going on, and, claiming to be, biggest NFT sellers in the world, and they're not, like just to get, just to pump and dump, right? And it's unfortunate. This is really hurting the space, and it's yeah. So we don't want to be part of the problem, but when it comes to like security, in implementation, it's like the games industry has always been a target, right? Like we've always got hackers chasing us, and all kinds of stuff happening. Gray markets have existed before blockchain, right?
DDoS attacks.
DDoS attacks, right? You have like a big PvP tournament, and like someone's DDoSing the servers, like it's the worst, right? So we just got to keep, on our toes, and keep, making sure that it's a priority, right? And making sure also we start to get more and more, solid teams, solid content in, and sort of hopefully wash out the whole noise of scammers and pump and dumps and all that.
And then I guess the follow-up question to that would be, are you guys also focused to working with partners like Elixir or Epic that want to like go through that vetting process to make sure that the games that are running through their launchers don't have any nefarious things on the games?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely on the lookout for a launcher that we could partner with, right? Like, I mean, again, when we talk about making it easy for developers, we want it to be like super easy, meaning you want a marketplace, we got a marketplace plugged in. You got a launch, you need a launcher, we got a launcher plugged in. We don't want you to have to think about that. We want you to make a great Web3 game. That's the priority for you, right? And we'll make sure that the rest is clear. So yeah, I mean, I saw you guys had Hyperplay as a topic here today, and I was like, oh, these guys just got some investment from Square Enix. That's really exciting, right? Like there are some up and coming launches also that I want to check out and see if we can work with them.
Dude, I absolutely love that. And that's what I meant earlier, right? Like providing not only the developing teams, but user an all-in-one platform, right? Like where you can just be like, hey, like just focus on what you do best, which is developing a great game. We'll take care of all the back end like work, like the integration of the tokenomics, the integration of a marketplace, the integration of a platform, if you want to have that trustability value behind your game, right? Because I agree with Hado, like one of the biggest turnoff as a Web3 gamer is talking to a game, and then you receive access, and the access come in like an exe file, right? That you have to download, and you're like, red flags, red flags. What the heck? Am I playing like one of those that old school classic Minesweeper games, right?
Gonna
Which you don't
drain
know
your
which one's
wallet.
gonna yeah, so it's gonna drain
Dude,
you, right? Like
I'm always
it's
feel
the
like I'm
same
in one of those
mindset.
movies where you have to like where you're trying to like turn off a bomb and you have to clip like the right fucking
It's like
cord.
there's two red wires. Which one is it?
I'm just like shit, man. Like,
I
all right,
totally feel that, man.
I gotta go test this baby out on the computer that has no wallets or anything
Right.
like that to make sure no weird shit happens. You know, like you always leave the wallet, like on that computer, I always leave like the wallet that has like $20. You know, like, all
Yeah.
right.
It
You
just
don't want
makes
Let's see
to
the
if they go
watch
for
all
gaming.
these
your
20
meme
bucks.
coins go away, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Oh, my Shaq toys, no. No. No, I mean, it just makes the gaming experience like feel like this big anxiety panic attack, right? Like it shouldn't feel that way, right? It should feel as easy as like, oh, there's a demo, I just want to try it. There's a beta, I want to try it. Let me click on it, let me download it, boom, it's done, right? And I feel like being on platforms like Epic and Steam, that's what that does for a game. But I would love to see a platform like that be more Web3 native, right? And the reason I say that is a platform like Hyperplay, for example, is Web3 native, right? And their main focus on discoverability is for Web3 games. So when you open up the platform, right off the bat in the homepage, all of the titles you see are basically Web3 titles, right? Which is something that you don't get in Steam or Epic, which are you gotta kind of like search for these games. And if you don't know how to search for them, you're not really gonna find them within those platforms, you know? So like that's why I love Hyperplay. And on top of that, Hyperplay has a really cool integration where it lets the users import their Epic library into their platform. So you're able to pull all the games that you have on Epic and bring them over to Hyperplay and already have them downloaded into the platform, you know? So I think there's a lot of cool things they're doing there, but it's definitely one of the topics of the gaming news that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, Elixir does
Um,
the same thing too. Like it has the exact same functionality.
Elixir? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was part of Elixir very early on when they only had like a few games in there, you know, and they're another platform that has been doing a lot of integrations of, of making the user experience a lot better. So that's really cool. But yeah, man, as far as Emberlight, like Missy mentioned, I would love to get to know more about the product, continue our communications with you guys just to see if there's any way we can get more people in touch with you guys, and start using your solutions, because I think is something that's definitely needed in the space. For everybody listening, make sure you guys go follow their social. I believe it's Emberlight underscore that underscore IO, I believe is what it is.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so make sure you guys follow them on Twitter or X, and check them out and start learning about what they're trying to solve in the space, because it's definitely important. But I wanted to move forward a little bit with some gaming news that have come into the space and just kind of get everybody's opinion on it. I wanted to start with Shrapnel. Shrapnel is implementing new weapon skins, and they also put up their NFT marketplace for SDX2. I saw some of the skins that they have here. I think it's pretty cool. I personally, what I wanted to ask you guys is, do you guys think this is adding on to the experience of the current stage of the game right now? Is it making it better? Is it kind of pointless to do this right now when it's not really going to matter when the game is fully out? How do I see you making faces, man? I know you've been playing Shrapnel a lot. I don't know if Rudy, do you know who Shrapnel is, or like what type of game is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm bullish on that team. Amazing
Yeah,
team.
yes, same to us, man. They're one of those teams again that have a blended history of experience, right? They have a lot of people from the Web2 world, and they have a ton of experience developing games. So definitely looking forward to them continuing to develop. But just of the stage that we're currently on, I wanted to get your opinion on like the skin releases and asking players to use their Shrap tokens to buy skins. What are your thoughts, Hado? Because I see you wanting to go, brother.
Okay. So first of all, that's awesome that it's out. We finally have something to do besides play the game. There's a little bit of trading you can do, right? There's a little bit of liquidity flowing into the token. It's not just a speculative asset anymore. However, I tried to play Shrapnel SCX2 this past weekend, and I uploaded a photo, another photo, and I think a video of the struggles that I had, where anywhere I looked, the map kept disappearing and reappearing and disappearing and reappearing. And then I had an abundance of crashes that have never happened before. Not even in the STX1 days. So I don't know what they're doing to, because they're basically building the world out more and they're adding textures and stuff. But other than that, I can't play the game. And then when it does run, it's running at very low FPS. So my personal experience has been shitty. But I love how the skins look. I love that there's a skin on my gun now whenever I get to see it. And that's really cool because like that was part of the, you know, the different tiers structured of like access. It's like you get skins for this, skins for that, whatever. So as time goes on, I think I'm going to get more skins because of the heavy pack that we have. But right now in its current state, I can't finish a match. I can't even get into it because the map is like popping in and out. And it's not a hard drive issue because I moved it to my good hard drive. This is like the M.2 storage hard drive, you know, directly connected to my motherboard. So it's not a latency issue when it comes to like loading anything. So I don't know what the problem is. I used their fix last STX, which was like something to do with DirectX 3D. So I don't know if it's like a technical issue on my end, but I just can't get through a session anymore. So that's my take on it.
Do you think with that point in mind, right? And this is why I wanted to ask this question: is like, is it too early right now to be implementing skins and worrying of like putting time and effort into that when they should be putting maybe more effort into optimization and figuring out this issue? Because as a user, right, like me personally, for example, I don't want to be dealing with M dot whatever the heck code you just said there. You get me? I'm not even like, I don't want to deal with that, bro. I want to just log in and play. You get me? And
Listen, man,
content.
I
Like,
actually
I have
think
the
the state of the
issue with
game is why
Valorant,
the
bro. I
timing
have
is
the
so
same issue
good.
with Valorant. What?
Yeah,
Don't
I actually
bring
think the
Valorant
current
into
state of
this.
the game.
Valorant is a saint. Leave Valorant alone.
Please,
That runs
please,
flawlessly.
let's leave that garbage out of here. We play real games in Catalyst.
Millions
Whatever
of
weird
players,
fetishes, whatever weird
millions
fetishes
of
Hado
daily
has on
active
his
users on
time.
Valorant, but it's fine. We won't talk about Valorant.
I mean, my brother in Christ Pixels has really high daily active users. I wouldn't consider that a good game.
There's no skill to pixels. Just stand there and farm. Get on with your point, man.
Nah, but all trolling aside, I actually think because of the current state of the game, it actually makes a lot of sense for them to introduce the NFTs and things like that. Why? Because when you fucking play the game, everyone's camping anyways, man. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know. This isn't an issue with me when it comes to bugs. I'm okay with dealing with fucking. I'm okay with dealing with fucking bugs. I'm okay with all these issues. Where for me is because it's an extractive shooter, and everyone's basically I won the game moment is extracting. I'm seeing an issue where I get into these lobbies and everyone's afraid to kill each other. Like I saw a screenshot the other day, and this fucking guy is bragging about how he extracted and he had such a good match, and he only had one kill. Like, I'm sorry, I'm too much of a fucking kill loving degen to be excited about only having one kill, but I extracted. Like, maybe if I see that there's skins with a certain value on the market, I might rethink my decision. I don't know, but it needs something. And I think the skin aspect and the marketplace aspect allows for people to actually get a dopamine effect from the game. Because there's no way you can tell me you're getting dopamine right now. I'm sorry. I hate to be the asshole in the room, but you play the fucking game. You kill 2 to 3 people if you're lucky. If you know the stars align for you and you manage to run into those other fucking people and kill them. Oh my goodness, I got 3 kills now. I feel amazing.
The good part about this is that maybe this will be an incentive to drive players to come out and play a little bit more, right? Because they do have certain missions that you have to complete to get like different skins for different guns, right? So maybe having
like it might give us something to fucking play aside from pillaging and looting, essentially.
Okay, but look, this is an extraction shooter. If you've ever played Tarkov, it's like that. You might be in an altercation for a good 5 to 10 minutes just trying to find somebody, and the other person might have left. Like that's the game. That's the game, bro.
I
And
know,
so
I know this, but what I'm saying is that I see it getting worse in Web3. Like it was barely bearable in fucking Tarkov, and like you add any more of that, and I don't know. Like the only way I see this being exciting is because of the skins. You know,
well,
I
I
know
was
some
gonna
people
say,
like
Nah,
extractive
in
shooter
my opinion, man, that's
and
a very
playing
easy.
soccer for FPS is great, but like I like getting fucking kills personally.
No, man, in my opinion, that's a very easy like game loop thing. Like just put
Yeah,
something in the game that makes players have to come out with it, they like it or not. You know, make like a
yeah,
safe zone shrink or like a gas or whatever the hell you want to make. Like, you know, look at BR games, right? Imagine if you didn't have anything in a BR games that would push players into the middle of the map or like push them out of the zone, right? Like it would be Camp City in there as well, right? Like if Warzone had no like gas zone or whatever pushing players out, everybody will be camping, right? So like that's what that game
yeah.
needs. It needs
well,
something
I'm
that's gonna
very
cause the players
I'm
to
very
always be
excited for
moving.
the UG. I'm very excited for the UGC because I think being able to just do whatever we want with the game or have people do whatever they want with the game will, obviously create a lot of options. And again, I'm super bullish on the team. I love the team. I think they're awesome.
yeah,
It's just my experience playing it so far. It's like humans are gonna do what humans are gonna do, right? So it's like you can have this beautiful idea in your head as a game developer, but then when it starts to play out in real time and you see like the player base picks up this habit, it's kind of hard to kick certain habits, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I don't necessarily blame the team. It's just the meta I'm seeing develop, right? Where it's like, all right, like we all sit in this map and we camp each other. And maybe I gotta clip this run, maybe I don't. I just feel like I'm watching soccer, dude. But I'm like one of the players on the fucking field. Like when you get that kill, you're screaming because it's the only kill you're getting that fucking game. Like,
Listen, man, I hope the camp situation gets better for your experience, man. I hope it really
yeah,
does. But Rudy, do you
At
have
least you can at
any
least play the game.
yeah.
Rudy, do you have any opinions on Shrapnel? I know you said you were bullish on the team, but like any opinions on like their economy models or anything that you're interested in as far as like what they have going on?
Yeah, I think Shrapnel's doing a couple of different things, right, in Web3, right? The game, they've got their Mercury tech, which they've been working on. I think they're a team that's really not just moving the industry forward from a game perspective, but also from a technology perspective, which I think is really cool. Big fan of what they're doing. I think going back to the skins thing, I think it's a tough balance, right? I mean, FPSs is a tough market, right? There's already some really great games in that that have got that sector on lockdown. So it's tough because you're new on the scene. You're still you're not fully built out game, and so you have to balance between like, okay, I got to fix issues, I got to deal with issues so people can play, but content like skins is sort of the kind of like the lifeblood of these kind of games, right? They keep you interested in what's going on. So they're a great team. They've bitten off a lot, right? Like, so we'll have to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot to deliver on. And I agree with you. I think they got hit with that a lot. Even before they released their playtest, people were already comparing them to Call of Duty, right? And that is a hell of a comparison to have on your play, man. And
First
like
of all, that's how you know they
it's
don't
that
even
first
know
of all,
games. Like it's not
well, yeah,
Call of
that's what I'm
Duty.
saying. Like, it's not
Yeah.
even like relatable, right? It's not the same type of game at all. But even if you were to compare it to like the Division, right, which was an extractive shooter, very similar style, like very similar ideas, right? Triple 8 studio from Ubisoft, like that's still a high comparable, like comparable to have for a new game that's coming into the space and it's still very early on, right? Like people need to like set their expectations correctly, I feel sometimes, and having an expectations of like, oh, this is going to be the next Call of Duty killer, going in is going to make you have a really bad gaming experience, right? Because that's not what you're going to get right off the bat. So I think people were setting up themselves on that type of scenario, but I don't know, man. I have no doubts in the Shrapnel team. I think with time and as long as they continue to use their funding correctly, they can develop a great game and a great experience. You know, because things that like that, like the camping situation, or like not having like developing new skins and stuff like that. Those are all things they can figure out as they develop the game. You get me? And add more onto the game loop and stuff like that, and they can implement changes to make those things better. But nothing but love to them. I think they can continue to develop a great game, and hopefully they'll have a full experience soon, and we can all enjoy it. But let's move on to the next piece of news, which comes from Night Crows, which is a new MMO that's hitting the WeMix ecosystem. I don't know if you're familiar with WeMix, Rudy, but they've developed like titles like Mer, which is a huge title in all of Asia, basically, And I think Night Crows is kind of targeting the same audience here, and they're definitely making a lot of noise. I know all three of us have been playing it a lot too. So I wanted to get into their news a little bit because they just released that they have 7 tokens coming into their gaming ecosystem, which when I read this, I thought it was a little crazy. 7 tokens seems like a lot to me. In the way of like, how do you make it? We were on this topic earlier, right? When we were talking about Emberlight, easy for the consumer to understand what each of these tokens are going to be for, right? Like what are their purposes in game? How do I acquire them? How do they fit the overall economy model, right? Do you guys think 7 tokens is a lot for like the ecosystem? Do you think there should be a cap of how many tokens a game should tackle at once? Or do you think this is a good thing and it can make sense?
So like it had always been on their trajectory to do 7 tokens, and I never understood it until I played the game. Do I think it's gonna work? No, I don't think so, personally. It's But I don't think WeMix is trying to build like the perfect economy with this game. I think what they're doing is, and it's very interesting to me, like when you play Night Crows, it feels like a cleaner version of Mir 4. And I think ultimately what they're doing is they're developing titles that are an improvement on the previous title until they finally solve the problem, which is how do we create a sustainable economy that is fun to play and incentivizes like a more, in my opinion, their player base seems to be more like Asia driven. So I think they're like really hyper focused on their niche as well. Like they know what gamers they want. They want Asia MMORPG gamers, is what it seems like. I can't speak for the team, but that's what I've noticed. I've been playing the game a lot. I'm running like 6 accounts right now. Yeah, like I have my main is like level 37, and then the rest of them are like floating between 30 to 36. And I've encountered 2 of the tokens so far. So like as far as like how I would use it, right? So we have the main token that's Crow. And the way that Crow works is you have an in-game token called Diamond, and you exchange a certain amount of the diamond for Crow. How much diamond? I think last time I checked, it was like 80 diamond for 1 Crow. I'm not 100% sure, because I haven't hit the level where you can actually exchange it, but that level is level 45. And then the other token I've encountered is called Morion or Morion or something like that. And it's this asset that you gain from completing one of their dungeon quests. And for that, I think the exchange rate is 10 more ion for like 1 token. So essentially, the way it looks is these tokens are almost like a representation of certain commodities within the game. So you have Crow, which is like the main ecosystem token. Like this is the one that's getting all the liquidity. But then you have these other commodity based tokens, like Morion is like not necessarily like a main token that I would buy unless I needed to use this asset within the game and then burn it to put it back into the game. Like I think what they're doing is they're creating sinks for different token sinks for different resources within their economy, which kind of begs the question, why didn't you just do it with Crow and drive all that action to 1 token? It's very interesting to me because like these tokens, like the other 6 tokens, the way that it works is you have Crow that has a max supply of 50 million. and then the initial supply that they issued was 5 million, and the remaining 45 million will be emitted through the gameplay, like people converting diamond into crow tokens. But then the rest of them have no initial supply issued so far, and they all have a max supply of 10 million apiece. So the remaining 6 tokens have a combined supply of 60 million tokens. And they're only minted by playing the game through the commodities that they're tied to. So like Morian, Frozen Tear, Piece of Sky, these are all items and things within the game itself that you can burn to create these tokens. I have a feeling they're all gonna end up playing into like the crafting loops. For example, like I need Morian in order to make the spear that I need. That if I want to really progress meaningfully past 40, I need one of these spears. So I think they're like tying all these other tokens to crafting or different aspects within the game that you need them for. So it does create a sort of market for it, but it's never going to be as valuable as the crow token, which is the main token. I think
So do you think
all in all, it has like a cool first year of economy, and then it just the whole thing crashes and burns. That's my opinion based on what I'm seeing.
so more like so do you think the 6 other tokens are leaning more into like an in-game currency type of thing, or are you also able to trade it or
You're able to trade
bridge
all
it
of them.
over?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like right, like they're all getting values right now, right? Like, let me go look it up. Right now, the Morian token is worth like, I think last time I checked, it was worth one token was worth like 10 crow. So they're all 9.6 crow. So they're all basically their value is how much crow are they worth. So right now, crow is worth like 90 cents, and one Morian is worth 10 crow. So technically, one Morian is worth $9. So it's weird how they basically like you have to get the Morian inside the game, burn it inside the game to turn it into a Morian token, and then that Morian is worth like a certain amount of crow. And then crow has its own value, which is right now 82 cents. And it's been interesting to see like how the token has gone down since it launched. Like all mint games, that's how it works, right? Like the highest value is usually within the first couple of days, then it dumps a bit, and then it eventually comes back up if it's a bullish game that people really like and they start continuously using. So the first couple of days it was like $3-4, and then now it's already sitting at like 80-90 cents. I honestly like I've been playing the game just to understand the economy because I find it so unique. And then it's an AI MMORPG, so it's like I don't have to actually play the fucking game a lot to
Yeah, you just
grind
keep
it
it running.
essentially. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I keep it running. Like I've been fully functional and working in between leveling all these 6 characters. Like it takes up maybe like 2 hours of my actual physical time a day to level these 6 characters that I've been leveling. And I think that's why the economy is eventually going to completely implode because it's too easy. Like, yeah, I know I can't technically do anything with the economy until I hit level 45, but I already have one character to level 37 and it's been about a week. So I'm assuming to get to 45, it might take me another week or two. But and then the interesting part with the economy so far that no one's talking about is when you hit level 50, you can mint your character as an NFT and sell it. And there's already a market for those. They're selling between 3,000 to 25,000 a piece. So people are buying them because they want access to the economy already, right? Like because you need to hit 45 to have access to anything in the economy to be able to like generate revenue from it. So it's like you might spend $3,000 and what's the upside? We don't know. Like the game is so early that we don't really know how much people are earning every day or what they're doing on the economy side on a regular basis. So it's kind of a gamble. But yeah, we've seen a few purchases happen in that like 4-figure range already. So it's been pretty cracked.
Yeah, that's super interesting, man. While I say some other information here, because I also think it's interesting how Nightcrows is an AI MMORPG, right? Like we were talking about, but it's so popular. So many people are interested in watching it and playing it, right? Like there's like if you look at their
Dude,
stream, I
it's
think there's like
insane.
it's like about 5,000 people streaming it right now, and I don't even know how many people are watching it. It has like almost quadrupled the amount of people streaming it than it does for Mer 4, you know? So a lot of people are
And it's
interested in
and
this
it
title.
a lot of it has to do with the fund that CROWS has created for the game. So they have like a super streamer fund or something like that. It's like a streamer supporting system. So a certain amount of the fees that they generate from the protocol or from the game and everything go towards this pool that incentivizes streamers, and they get like a payout based on viewership, based on what they're doing. So it's like a completely like governance version of, I guess, the way a game in Web3 would like reach out to one of us and be like, hey, how much for a stream or something like that. Like when we're doing marketing and promo, they have it like on chain, and it's like, boom, like just enter your, enter your application. This is how much you might earn. And it's super automated. It's not like they have to go back and forth with the team, and they're just streaming on Twitch essentially for a piece of the pie. And the game is getting so much viewership. Like in the first week, they did over 250,000 daily active users. The servers are full of shit. Like I think my wife waited on a 2,000 person queue this morning for the server that we're on. And there's multiple servers with these kind of queues. And like there's Web3 games that just want 2,000 players, let alone a queue for 2,000 players. So it's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot throughout this process. Like this has been a very educational experience for me, like where I would have done certain things different, what they did right. I think like a governance model for streamers is like kind of cracked. It's pretty cool. Like it's a little transactional, but it's also like I could see how much easier it would be for a team instead of having to reach out to like 30 different content creators. It's kind of like you just throw a certain amount of money in a contract and say, come get it. And based on certain performance metrics, maybe you get something, you get something. That's the point. But, and then the way that they're looking at the economy, and do these 6 tokens actually work? Do they tank to shit and no one really cares because they're a fundamental part of the game? Like, these are all the things that my brain is like exploding as I experience the economy, because that's essentially the only thing you can play, right? Like the rest of it is automated. Yes, you have to like skill up and increase your armor in order to kill certain bosses and do certain quests and things like that. So it gets very important, but I feel like the game loop is really in like management of the character, and then how are you going to use your assets to either earn or to increase the strength of your character. So I've it's been something that I've been like nerding out on, so I can learn and like help teams in the space, with the experience that we get from playing the games. Because I've never seen a game launch and be like, yeah, we have 250,000 players in a week in Web3. So I was just like, shit, man, like I better do some fucking homework.
Yeah, man. No, that you bring up some great takes, man. But Hado or Rudy, do you guys have any opinions on this? Do you guys think that having this type of economy, quote unquote economy model, is going to be something that users are going to be interested in exploring, or is it more complicated than it needs to be, and it's not going to be something that users are going to find interest based on those complications?
Well, those lazy people like me will benefit off of a service they can pay for to learn all that shit, because that's what's going to happen is the people that aren't as invested as Mizzy. Well, Mizzy's going to have all the details on how you can make a living off of this, or maybe a practice off of this. And then you can monetize that stuff, because a lot of people aren't going to do that. I'll tell you right now, I'm not doing it. So, I mean, I think it's cool to see that we're rebirthing Bitcoin in a way, because Crow, to me, to trading everything to Crow is like trading everything to Bitcoin, because there's Bitcoin pairs for almost everything on Binance. So I find that interesting, but it could be complex. It might be very intimidating to some, and I think that's opportunity for others who don't care how complicated it is, honestly.
Yeah, and I'll just add that it's not uncommon to have a lot of currencies in an MMO. I mean, a large experience like that, you're going to have a lot of currencies, and there are people who will go deep on that, right? Like there's a type of player that loves that and will min max it, right? They'll min max, they'll figure it out.
We're out here.
And like they'll post on Reddit, and then people like me the lazy ones will go and like just copy what they do, right?
Well, listen, I think we're seeing that live here with Missy and that thorough explanations that he just provided us with, which I thought was great, man. Because and this circles back to the idea that I was saying earlier. And how do you saying that you're gonna pay for a service to learn this stuff? But I see the avenue of someone like Missy who's a content creator creating the content for all of this stuff, and then us being the consumer just going to YouTube and getting it for free, because that's the content world we live in. We don't need to pay for services. We can just go to YouTube. Somebody just needs to be making the content, right? And like actually providing that value to people out there.
Yes,
So hopefully
but
we start seeing that in their ecosystem is content creators coming
Don't
in and
worry, I'm gonna.
explaining.
I see the biggest pain point in this game, the English community. Like, there's so much YouTube content, and when you type in Night Crows on YouTube, it blows your fucking mind because you're like, holy shit, where did all these people come from? There's hundreds of videos, like 10 of them are in English. So there's a really, really big opportunity for like an English speaking content creator
I believe you.
in this
I
industry.
believe you.
I don't need to be, I myself am part Asian, so no hate to my fellow, Asian brothers and sisters, but bro, like, homie was scratching his head trying to watch some of these fucking videos because even when they do speak English, it's very, very difficult to understand. Even me, who grew up like in an Asian community where they don't necessarily speak English all the time, I was like, "Fuck, bro! Like, I don't understand any of this shit." So I personally will be creating content around the game. I've just been trying to experience it first. Because I feel like something that we do poorly in Web3 gaming as gamers and content creators is we start playing the game where it's like, how do I create content? How do I do that? Like, let me actually like be able to speak this shit off of the top of my head and like truly experience the game because I actually like the game. And then I have a strategy on how I'm gonna like have the content live both on Twitter and YouTube because I think this game in particular has a very strong YouTube audience.
And I
So yeah, don't worry, I got you boys on the guides and shit. I got you.
Yeah, but I think there's also a level of like, here's the paywall, and if you want all my hot picks that I don't mention in my YouTube videos, subscribe to me on Patreon or something. That route is
Listen,
very possible here.
I am a man of the people.
Well, I mean,
believe.
that's up to the creator. That's up to the creator how they monetize their content, man.
I'm a
But
man
I definitely think
Honestly,
definitely more content around games and Web3 will be great, and like things like that, like guides or like explanations on breakdowns on economy models or like how to use the proper tools inside the economy model, similar to your experience in big time, Hado, when you started playing, and like how you were, looking for that content of like how do I do this in the economy, or what do I need to buy to like make sure that I can run it successfully, right? Like that's what we need more of in the space.
like, yeah, I mean, anyone that's watching right now, and if you want to find out how to earn from Night Crows, like I'll tell you straight off rip, level a fuck ton of characters and sell them for the first couple months. That's probably going to be the most financially like beneficial way to play the game because you're going to have all these guilds that need these high level characters to eventually get scholars and be able to create like their own in-house economy model. So they're going to need characters in bulk, right? So level up, run like 6 devices like I am. I'm a jackass though. I'm not leveling these to sell them. I just want to have like 6 level 50 characters because it's cool. I should probably sell them, but I know I won't. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like the number one earning loop right now. It's the number one earning loop in Illumia. For those of you out there that don't know the Illumia economy, it's the best kept secret of Illumia. People are selling characters for a good amount of money.
And people would pay
And then
for that, but you ruined everything. God damn it.
Yep. I think eventually we'll get to a point with this game where we have to balance out like, do I earn more from selling the character or do I earn more from playing the character at a higher level? We're not there yet. We don't know anything with this game when it comes to that. The one thing that does scare me about creating this type of content is I'm afraid of breaking the game. I'm afraid of breaking the economy because like once these videos really start to go out there, everyone starts to do it, and that's what creates like a race to zero, right? Like everyone just plays the game extractively and it kind of falls apart, which is why I'm interested in seeing how, Nightcrow handles that because there will be a point where everyone is picking up this game. Like we already have 250,000 players. That number is a little skewed because, for example, I'm playing it on 6 devices, right? So how many other people similar to myself are playing on multiple devices. I'm playing it on 2 phones, an iPad, a PC, a laptop, and my wife's iPad. So it's like, I'm sure there's guys out there with like 20 fucking devices that are just going for it. So probably only like 50,000, maybe, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that's still a lot of players for a brand new game. I mean, I think that's part of building a sustainable model, man. If you can sustain the fact that everybody's using the model, something went wrong. And so like I think that's a good test. It's like I don't think like people understanding how to use the economy model and how to like use it effectively, right, should be the like race to zero like component of an economy model, right? Like the team should be prepared for that, and that's what they should aspire to have. It's like everybody in the game using the economy model, right? Now, whether it becomes distracting or not, that's something that we're gonna have to wait and see how the community reacts to that, right? But moving along with the gaming news, we have Square Enix investing in Hyperplay. This was something we were kind of touching base on earlier when we were talking about Hyperplay. Like I mentioned earlier, man, I think this is a massive play. I think a platform like Hyperplay has a really good chance of becoming like the big platform like Steam and Epic is to the traditional gaming world, but for Web3. Like I said, I think they're doing a lot of things right. They have a lot of titles in their platform, and they're offering games that trustability of like, hey, you can feel safe playing the games inside our platforms. So what do you guys think about this investment round? Do you think this is going to catapult Hyperplay into like higher grounds, or is this something that we're gonna see across other platforms like Elixir and other ones that are coming into the space? How I'm gonna throw it to you.
Rudy has to hop in like 5 minutes, so let's have him go first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, oh, shall I go? I'm good. All right. Yeah. So Hyperplay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. We need ways for players to find games, Web3 games, right? Like this, undoubtedly, that's one of the big problems. And we've got to you know we've got to support teams like this, right? Like if you're coming in and you're like, I'm want to make a Web3 game, how does discoverability work? How do you get to users, right? Like if you've got a single player game, okay, you need less users, but if you got a multiplayer game of any kind, right, like you need player liquidity. That's just what these sort of these stores or these launch pads they provide, and why they're so necessary. And in sort of Web 2, we take it for granted, right? Like we have the Xbox Marketplace and Nintendo eShop and all that kind of stuff that provides that player liquidity. And you make a game, you don't really think about that stuff, right? And so, we need that stuff to happen in Web 3. And it's great to see teams like Hyperplay and Square Enix. They've invested a couple of times in Web 3. They invested in Sandbox way back. So it's nice to have a team from Web 2 that's well known, that's well recognized, supporting the cause, right? Because I think that just draws attention, it adds legitimacy, it helps us continue to build the Web3 brand, and gets us visibility in the Web2 world to teams who are like, well, how do I do these things in Web3? Now they know Hyperplay exists, which is awesome.
Hell yeah, man. I love that take. Missy, Huddle, do you guys have anything you guys want to add to this coming into the space with Hyperplay?
I mean, Hyperplay's on the Mac, right? I don't think that Elixir's on the Mac, so that's definitely more accessibility for more users. I just think that whichever of these two, because to me, this is like, I don't want to say they're competitors like Hyperplay, Elixir. I don't think there's any other guys in that category, but it kind of reminds me of the Steam versus Origin race where you had like some exclusivity here and there, and it hasn't really hit that point yet, but I'm going to assume that Square is going to bring their products to Hyperplay now at some point, and they're probably not going to go to Elixir unless they're both being funded by them. Then they both go there. I don't know. So I don't know where this goes, but I think exclusivity is kind of done nowadays. I think like even Sony and Xbox are letting you play Modern Warfare together. Like I never thought in my years of existing on this planet that I'd see that ever. Like I never thought that'd be possible. And there's also been rumors of like Microsoft and Nintendo doing some stuff buddy buddy. I mean they've shared characters and IPs and stuff. So the fact that that's happening in the regular world should be a signal. But I just see this just being a good thing for the industry. A solid industry player investing into technology into Web3. It's a big
It
W.
was
By
a
the
very
way,
interesting. Go ahead, Clouds.
oh no, go. I was just gonna add they have invested in Elixir, Square Enix. I don't think there's much competition when it comes to platforms for games. I think it's just accessibility at the end of the day, so they don't really go for exclusivity rights most of the times. But it's just really cool to see integrations moving it forward, right? Like those platforms moving them forward. But go ahead, Missy.
It was very interesting because we saw Elixir is starting to ramp up their talks for their token, right? So it's like on one end we have this very like bullish Web 2 centric, and I'm a fan of Hyperplay. Euthenia, their community manager, was like one of the first people I was cool with in the space. Shouts out to her, she's awesome. And a lot of people don't know, but Hyperplay's product designer is actually who we worked with to design the Catalyst logo. So we're really close with the Hyperplay guys. Shout out Pimentel. And we saw this Web 2 announcement of like Square Enix investing, and then we saw Elixir come in and be like, oh, we're going to be launching a token soon. So it was like, it couldn't be bigger parallels. And it's really interesting to me to see how, Square Enix is going to end up influencing the overall vision of something like Hyperplay. Like, are they going to be releasing games exclusively there? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I'm bullish on both Elixir and Hyperplay because, we literally had one of our guild members get her wallet drained this week because she tried downloading an exe file. So ultimately, it's like we need these launchers right now. There isn't enough security for them to even compete. Like, just grab all the market share you guys can because they're both needed. And I think there's so many games that there's room enough for both.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, man. I don't think there's a competition aspect, but yeah, I agree with the trustability and accessibility part for users. It's just way better to have them on platforms like Hyperplay, Elixir, Steam, etc. But listen, guys, this has been an incredible episode. One of our longer ones, but I enjoy every piece of it, man. The conversation was awesome, and Rudy, we would love to have you back again sometime soon, man, and continue catching up. Again, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on the show and getting to know you and what you're working with Emberlight and bringing to the space. Before we head out, anything you want to tell the audience or anything you want them to check out on the upcoming weeks or month, go ahead, man. Let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thanks for having me. You guys have an awesome show. This is great. I would absolutely love to come back. And what would be fun is maybe I can come back with one of our game teams next time. We can talk because you guys, I love the way you guys think
Hell yeah,
about
man.
Web3 games. So let's plan
Would
on
love
that.
that.
As far as us, like our next big event is going to be Token 2049 in Dubai. It's going to be a massive event. Really excited to be there. We're going to do a bunch of announcements. You can check out emberlight.io as our website. It's got link to all our socials, and you can always hit me up on Twitter. It's just my name. Come find me, or X, whatever. I keep calling it Twitter.
It's Twitter.
We all call it Twitter, man. No
It
worries.
will always be Twitter, man. I don't care what Elon says.
Yeah, exactly. All right, my people.
No. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And listen, man, I would love to have you back with a game team. That would be awesome. And guys, make sure you guys are following Emberlight on all social as well as Rudy. Get to know them and explore on what they're building. But guys, again, this has been an incredible episode. Make sure you guys catch it on Spotify when it comes out later. If you weren't here for the whole thing, you can watch the whole recording there. And until then, guys, we'll see you on next Sunday. Peace.